News starts now.
The countdown is on. Michigan lawmakers have just days to pass a budget for the next fiscal year.
And if lawmakers can't reach a budget by midnight October 1st, it would trigger a government shutdown, with state services facing significant disruptions. The Michigan budget debate is our big story today.
The 2025-26 fiscal year budget was supposed to be done by July 1st. The Michigan Senate passed its budget proposal in May, while the House passed its version in August. And now lawmakers are trying to compromise on a final budget plan. However, Democrats say the Republicans' budget makes too many cuts, and Republicans say the Democrats' budget does not save the state any money. Bobby Cushing has the latest on the budget debate.
Democratic House Leader Ranjiv Puri says lawmakers are working around the clock to avoid a shutdown.
This is exactly what Lansing Democrats were fearful for the last few months, when we've been clamoring that it didn't need to be like this.
He says House Speaker Matt Hall delayed the budget process, quote, way further than it needed, end quote. And now they are seeing the effects of it.
We have statutory deadlines in July 1st to making sure that some portion of the budget's done. At that point, blew through it and didn't even think twice about it.
Puri says the Republican House budget and the Democratic Senate budget have differences that created sticking points on crucial areas of funding, including education, roads, and mental health services.
And you saw billions of dollars of cuts to all these critical things that you mentioned. Anything that would be needed for a state to thrive is something that they cut out of the budget.
Republican Representative Parker Fairbairn called that sentiment, quote, totally fake.
In terms of the negotiations, he's not really even in them. So we're working really hard with the Senate and the governor's team to make sure we get a positive result.
In terms of how far apart the two sides are on a budget, Fairbairn says he believes something may be on the horizon.
We're optimistic about getting something done by the deadline. I'd say, we're still working on getting closer, but we know there's going to be compromise.
He says Republicans are focused on fighting for increased pay for law enforcement and funding the roads.
With that October 1st deadline looming, local school districts are having to budget accordingly.
District leaders have to make plans without really knowing what funding they'll be getting this year. 13 Action News anchor Alexandria Manthe spoke with one local superintendent about the challenges of planning for the unknown.
Yeah, I sat down with Dr. Carl Schultz from Bedford Local Schools. He said that it's like building a budget in the dark. Dr. Schultz says that local school districts can plan based on years prior or the preliminary numbers the state releases in June. But until the pen hits the page on that state budget, they don't know for sure. Also up in the air is universal free lunches for students. Students in Michigan have received free breakfasts and lunches since the start of the pandemic. First, it was funded federally, then the state stepped in. But in this year's budget, that program may not exist. Districts get monthly checks from the state, and if a budget isn't passed by October 1st and there is that government shutdown, districts may not receive their checks for September and October. Dr. Schultz said that Bedford could withstand a few months without the state funding, but not every district is in that position.
But for districts that do not have a strong fund balance or a strong budget process, they could be in a position where they need to borrow just to make payroll. And borrowing money costs money, right? And so many banks do not want to loan funds, especially that type of funds, for 30 days, 45 days. They want some kind of a commitment.
Now, as for school lunches, Dr. Schultz says that he plans to work with the Bedford School Board to cover costs for October's meals. But after that, if the state fails to include universal school meals in the budget, it would go back to only offering free or reduced meals to families who qualify. Tina.
All right, thanks so much, Alexandria. Vulnerable groups in Michigan are holding virtual roundtables this week to highlight how this potential shutdown would hurt people who might need the assistance most. The roundtable focused on health care and food security issues that leaders say would be greatly impacted by state budget cuts. According to the Michigan Health and Hospital Association, hospitals in Michigan stand to lose more than $6 billion over the next 10 years due to proposed cuts by the state house. The executive director of the Michigan Council for Maternal and Child Health is also raising concerns that if the budget doesn't pass on time, it could jeopardize all the progress in Michigan. She's claiming it's the safest it's ever been for mothers and newborns.
If we don't provide the services and supports we know families need, it adds one more stressor. It forces women and their families to try and afford the things they need to protect their health in an environment. We know that if we don't support all of these things, we will obviously impact their overall outcomes.
Now, as of 2023, the state's infant mortality rate is down to nearly 6 out of every 1,000 live births, the best it's ever been in Michigan history.
Transit systems in the state could also face some tough times with the passage of a new budget. Transit officials in Michigan say financial investments in transit have not kept up. This comes as more people than ever are relying on public transportation. If the Senate version of the state budget in Michigan passes, there will be just $226 million for local bus operations. According to the Delta Area Transit Authority's executive director, that's the lowest in state history.
What's happened specifically with transit funding is it has not kept up with inflation. After COVID, insurance costs and employee costs. And so, all the transit systems in the state of Michigan, not just in Escanaba, they're all struggling with the same reduction in funding.
The Michigan Public Transit Association says it is working on a solution, and if nothing changes, it could mean fewer bus routes in the future.
The Michigan Department of Agriculture also facing cuts. The director, Tim Boring, saying the cuts could significantly limit disease mitigation and food safety efforts. Right now, the House budget plan slashes more than a third of the department's budget. This includes cuts to food safety work, emergency response and preparedness, and customer service operations. This comes as the federal government is also making cuts, pushing for state governments to fund the Department of Agriculture. Now, the director released a statement going on to say that the cuts, quote, will make government work worse for small business owners and threaten the rural economy, adding that, quote, assisting Michigan farmers and agribusinesses isn't wasteful. It's how local healthy food can reach our dinner plates. It's an economic lifeline for Michigan's small rural businesses.
The Department of Natural Resources is also warning about the impact of these cuts. Right now, 16 Michigan counties have confirmed cases of chronic wasting disease. This disease is a fatal, slow-developing disease which affects white-tailed deer, elk, and moose. The DNR has labs that test this disease in animals, and the department also relies on collecting samples for testing. But in the event of a shutdown, collections would also stop. A shutdown would create a backlog of testing for the department when the government reopens as well. Department leaders say even if a shutdown were just lasting for a few days, the DNR would see bigger impacts to the systems they have in place.
The State Attorney General Dana Nessel also speaking out, saying the proposed House budget plan would reduce her budget by 30%. The cuts would limit resources for justice systems all across Michigan, especially in the rural counties. Republican leaders in the House say the cuts will combat fraud, waste, and abuse in the state government. But Nessel says her department's successful and must remain fully funded.
I think it's important to note for every $1 that goes to the Department of Attorney General in Michigan, we bring $4 back to the state. As of October 1st, we will no longer have the staff in order to handle the prosecutions for Lake County. It will be literally like the purge there. They will have no prosecutors in Lake County.
This would not be the first time Michigan entered a government shutdown. It also happened during the economic crises in 2007 and 2009. Both shutdowns back then only lasted a few hours. Lawmakers